displaced from 16 to 21.
Okay.
That time where you have to discover who you are, or you're on that journey.
I moved to the UK in 1966, November 1966. I was 6. The idea was exciting until the day came, and leaving my grandmother. I just, my brother ran away and he hid. I was crying and I didn't want to go. It was heartrending leaving my granny and then coming to England. When I arrived, it was November, it was freezing in your cotton frock and it was cold and everything looked dark and grey and foggy and it just didn't look welcoming at all. It was just to me, what is this place? It felt like, it just didn't seem like anywhere nice.
I have felt displaced in lots of places where I called home.
For me, growing up in Cardiff, I think really messed with my perception of how I'm perceived and how I am accepted. In fact, there wasn't the perception of I'm accepted, it was the perception I'm not accepted. And I took that very personally and it made me very defensive. I ended up attaching a lot of my emotional distress to being because I was in Cardiff. And so that immediately kind of disconnected me from feeling that it was my home.
Being born and raised here in the UK, but then obviously being black, some people would interpret me straight away as someone who probably just came here a few years ago and and I'm like, no, I was actually born and raised here, whether that's because there's the whole media attention on sort of foreignness and the other in terms of immigrants and stuff like that just makes some people equate anyone who is non-white British as they've all just came recently or something like that. So yeah, I felt displaced in that sense.
One time I went to Bristol and someone was like, oh, so where are you from? And I was like, I'm from London. She goes, oh no, where are you really from? And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, because you're not a Londoner. I was like, I am a Londoner. She goes, no, you're not. I said, so you mean like where's my family from? She goes, yeah, where's your family from? And I told her and she was like, oh, okay. And in that stranger, she claimed me as something else.
Because I was trying to think, what can I pick out in particular that displaced me, to use your words. And I can think of the first thing that I think it was about 7, when it was exactly a similar thing like that, when I was going to a shop and there was an old woman who always reminded me of Ina Sharples now, and I think she looked just like, Coronation Street wasn't on then, but now, think back, she was always in black with a hairnet and she lived on our road. And I think I'd come home from school and Mum was out, so I must have been about 8 years old. So I'd gone up to the corner shop because I knew they were very friendly then. I knew her very well then, and I went to the shop to get something, and then this one was looking at me like I'm a lump of shit basically. You could see the disgust in her face, and she said, you are a little nigger, aren't you? And I didn't know what nigger meant.
I remember you telling me this.
Right? And I thought, I knew the way she said it wasn't very nice.
The way that people react around you does play a huge part in what you feel, whether you feel displaced or not, whether you feel it's home.
When I went to France, I was young, I didn't have language, I didn't have French, and I was living with everybody who was speaking French, and yet I didn't feel as displaced as when I came to London. But London wasn't, and I was living, it was my home. I didn't feel safe. I lived in the West End because I was Irish. It wasn't good to be Irish in London, and I come from Northern Ireland, so I was afraid. I kept my mouth shut because it wasn't safe to open my mouth.
When the Taliban closed the schools for the girls, with some friends we opened a school. Always the girls were asking me about the women's right, the international law and Islamic law. So I wrote a book about the women's right and published it, 4,000, and I give for my students. I have in this time around 4,000 students. So my student bought my book and I give the money for the publisher, but the publisher, when he saw that I sold 4,000 books in a week, he said, oh, probably it is something good without my permission. He published these books, I don't know how much, so it was all over the Peshawar, and my books were at the hand of these people. And then one day I wanted to leave home, that my cousin called and said, don't come, because 4 men with the gun is coming. They are after you, they are breaking the glasses, they are beating the girls, and they are looking for you, so don't come. And in this time I need to run away. My family need to leave this place. My uncle decide to, they find someone and they paid the man to take me out. And this was like beginning of more difficulty, but freedom as well. Free from this home.
I was a political refugee from South Africa. Big mouth one. The rejection of being a colored when I came to this country. Being told again what I am, as I was any in South Africa, Kafur and whatnot here when I came. Oh, it's a colored person. I'm looking for a place. It's not me, Tembi, or Mrs. Nopatlo, whatever you want. It's a colored person who's looking for a place. Again.
People at school making jokes about, Africans. Some people would make jokes about Africans don't wear shoes, so that means you must only own one shoe because I'm half English, And these were actually from Caribbeans.
They used to make fun of my accent because I had a very strong Jamaican accent. I remember the word hink all the time. We used to use a fountain pen. Can I buy you hink? Hink! And they used to tease me rotten to the extent where I wouldn't speak unless I had to.
My sister and I were always othered when we went home to Kenya. When we went home to Kenya and were with my mother's family, we were always the Mzungus. Even I guess my parents, they used to speak Swahili only when they wanted to say stuff for us not to know. Which I think is quite I don't blame them at all, but I think that it's quite a device. It's quite a mechanism, isn't it? Language. When you use language as a tool to keep you out, even in like a kind of intimate setting of a family, I guess it does something.
It's kind of harder to, because it's not tangible, because it's so when you're little and you get told, or that there's this displacement that it's impossible to get your head around it. And I remember being completely baffled by it. When I remember vividly one memory. My mum would tell me from very young, so I don't remember how old I was. I think I just always knew. But I remember I must have been about 5, and I remember being really upset and crying on her bed, and she cried because I was like, but I don't understand. I remember saying to her, I don't understand what you're saying, but you're my mum, so you're not my mum. Like, I don't, so I can't work out whether there's something psychologically very fundamental that would happen to a baby's mind and brain if you're taken from your birth family at a young age and then in another place and then in another place. Maybe there's something fundamental that happens to your sense of self, because it's such an important part of your development, and or whether that's coupled with an experience of being told that you're not that this isn't how it should be, or this is different.
As a child, whenever I went somewhere with my dad's family and my mother wasn't there, I never questioned it. It was just how it was and what it was. And as I used to get older, it became more of a juxtaposition in my mind, that I was the juxtaposition within the image of us going out as a group of people or as a family. It made me feel quite uncomfortable, and it made me feel very displaced. And and I look around and there's no one else of my complexion.
Yeah, I'm the odd one out in my family, I'm slow. I have like 4 older brothers and the youngest girl. Oh, I'm the only girl, obviously, I'm the youngest. So. I'm the only gay one out of all of them, so that's already an issue. So it's like, well, and then I think also the expectations as well, as like, oh, you're 30,
you have no babies, and all of that stuff. Like you already feel like you're out of place, and I think the idea of who you're meant to be as a woman anyway, in a house full of older boys, when you were raised to kind of be this kind of matriarchal kind of figure, and then you're just like going against all of that. Total displacement.
Quite a hard thing to say would be in my own adopted family, a sense of, you know, for me my experience of otherness has been continual, and that is not because of anyone intentionally doing that, but things like being called a special grandchild, or you know, things like that, where there's things that feign towards something positive but without meaning to then other you.
I've done shows, I've gone out to Wales, anything outside of Central. When I've gone and done any kind of show, one or two things happen. Either I feel like an outsider just aesthetically because there's no one that looks like me again. But it's so funny because you're outside doing a poetry show, but because of who you are, it's almost I'm doing two shows. One is the poetry, the second is me, like I'm on show. You know, it's almost like, hey, and I don't know, I'm not in people's minds, right? But it's almost like, oh, look at this guy who can speak, you know, who can speak clearly or speak eloquently or whatever the case may be. There's always this juxtaposed kind of feeling of, yes, they're listening to what I'm saying, but they're also sort of like I'm almost a spectacle.
Times when I get it, where people realize I'm Nigerian, they're like, oh, you speak English so well. And I'm like, you do know we speak English in Nigeria, like, and some people speak better English than you do. Like,
now everybody thinks that being African and having an African accent is dope because they watch all the African comedy shows. When I came to England, it wasn't like, as soon as I read the first time my teacher read my name, and everyone just looked at me like, even the black kids in the class looked at me like, who's this boy? I was playing basketball, and it's something I've noticed now. It's a new form of adaptability where people. I met this Nigerian boy. We didn't know I was Nigerian when he got to the park, and I asked him, "What's your name?" And so just call me C. That's a form of adaptability because he believes that if he says his name properly, no one's going to be able to say it. I was like, no, I know your name is not C. Like your mom didn't call you C. So tell me what's your proper name. And he said, oh, my name is Chibike. And I was like, that's Chibike. Like, and he's like, oh, you said it properly. I was like, yeah, because I could say your name properly. It's not that difficult. If people can build spaceship to go to the space, like, you can say things properly. And that's another form of pressure to adapt. He's already thinking in this environment, I won't even bother telling you my name. That does something to you.
people do interact with you differently based on your blackness is what I think, or what they perceive to be your blackness.
Okay.
And what scale that blackness is according to them and what they understand, which is interesting.
Because of the way I was brought up, and I was never ever made to feel when I was growing up that there was anything wrong with the way I was ethnically or in terms of being mixed, and people completely accepted who I was. When you come across this country at age 12 and you've got that very certain sense, I've had people shout racist abuse to me and I don't care because I don't take it on personally because I know the issues with them.
The political conversations that happen in London, the conversations about blackness with a capital B, are ones that I don't feel that I can relate to, and that makes me kind of feel other. Because I haven't really had those experiences. I've never actually been put in a position directly that I've had to justify myself in any way. In the States, that's where I felt the most sense of other, but that's because I felt that I was being forced to make a choice, which I didn't understand. I got pulled over by the cops driving in the wrong lane. It was like, I was driving at the wrong time on the motorway, and I was supposed to have two people in the car, and I was by myself, and I'd forgotten these stupid rules. Anyway, so the cop then marks me as black, and it was the first time that I had ever been called black in my life. and that I was really angry. And people might misinterpret that anger, and this is the thing that I find frustrating, is I'm not saying I was angry because I felt that I was not given a choice to say, well, actually, I'm mixed, and this is who I am. And I refuse to lose a part of me for your political and racial convenience.
With the Caribbeans and like growing up with Caribbeans, and second generation Caribbeans as well, and them like knowing some of the culture and actually being able to claim that, at least even if they were British, they could claim like the places because it was practiced in the household. So it's like when people say, oh Shawty, you're St. Lucian, oh yeah, and they start speaking like patois, and I was like yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, mate. And they're like, oh, you're not proper St. Lucian then, or you're not proper Barbados. So I've definitely felt out of place with that.
Sometimes I'm just fed up of being the one black person. You know, at an event, you might go to an art event and you're the one black person, and all of a sudden we are diverse. We are a diverse company welcoming everybody in, you know, and there's 10 black people in somewhere where there is, or 10 people of colour. And the hall is filled with 400 people that reflect the indigenous people here, and I mean white people, and yet I'm a part of this great Britain. This is my home. And what does that mean when you feel like you are fighting always to survive in your home? How can you fight to survive in your home? But you expect that from an abusive situation.
When you look at, specifically with the Brexit versus, what's going on with Trump and all that stuff, and you run it in parallel, the common theme coming through is, folks, it's this common immigration type thing, and folks being scared of people based off of hearsay and some loss of control, some loss of some fantasized control that you really never had in the first place. And it's the fear of all of that I think in both places that's driving, a lot of this unrest. This kind of fear of something that doesn't really exist.
You're othered in that as a black British person, there is parameters for you, and those parameters aren't spoken about that you feel when you hit them.
With this present government, they've made it very clear that they gave you the citizenship. I mean, not them, the Brits, and that they can take it away. So what does that tell me? It tells me that this is not my home.
Yeah.
Openly they've said it. I'm sure you've heard it in the news and what. That we gave it to you, we can take it away.
Yeah.
So how do you feel when you are walking on eggshells?
See, before, when I said we, I would mean we, the world. But now I think when you say we, I mean brown people. And I would never have articulated anything like that before. I hate the we and they-ness of the world. Basically, I feel like every time someone doesn't account for the wide nuance of my story, that's a kind of displacement.